Okay, so this week we're going to be heading towards India, uh, spending a little bit of time with the Romans, but mostly we're focusing on India, uh, which is a country that has a very interesting history. Also, a country you should be aware of since they have a population the size of China, and their impact on the world economy is going to be huge during your lifetime. Now, as far as the landmass of India, it's about the same size as Europe, so it's a fairly large landmass. It contains an extremely diverse population. At the time that writing is established there, six main ethnic groups exist within India, and that'll just uh, explode from that point on. Civilization develops in two main valleys, and you should know this. The main valleys are the Indus and the Ganges, which, like the Nile in Egypt, are large rivers that allow for the expansion of agriculture because you can irrigate from the rivers, and the rivers overflow and do a natural irrigation also. While these populations in those valleys lagged other civilizations as far as cultural developments, like those in Mesopotamia, where we saw Gilgamesh coming from. Once civilization does come into being, then there's a veritable cultural explosion. It just goes absolutely nuts. Now, here's a map of the region. You can see the Indus River running through what is now present day Afghanistan and Pakistan, and the Ganges is running through northeastern India. Even today, the Ganges River is still considered sacred by Indian Hindu and Indians in general. It's just a sacred spot to come to. All right, now archaeologists believe that the cultural explosion that did occur in these valleys may have been due to the invention of what's known as burnt brick. And this is brick made of clay and sand and then fired in a kiln. The reason this is important is they allow for flood control and drainage. So it allows them to build cities and cultures from there. So by 2600 BCE, before the Common Era, the Indus-Harappan civilization is well established. However, the Indo-Aryan civilization, which invades somewhere around 2000 BCE, displaces the Indus-Harappan civilization, and this Indo-Aryan civilization will prove to be one of India's greatest creative forces, especially in the areas of literature that we're studying and also in the areas of religion. Though when and where the Aryans came from is now in dispute. So historians are unsure as to whether the Aryans entered India and then destroyed the Indus-Harappan civilization, or whether some other causes had wrought the destruction of the Indus-Harappan civilization, and the Indo-Aryans simply came in and established themselves. Now, however, like we see with the Greeks, writing disappears. And we go back to an oral tradition, but it will be reestablished by the Aryans who speak a language that will evolve into Sanskrit, which will be the primary language of literature from 1200 BCE to 1800 CE with the coming of the British. Sanskrit will be a major language of the world. Now, the Indo-Aryans also lay the foundation for religion with religious hymns. These hymns are then collected in four books known as the Vedas. Now, originally, these are just memorized. They're in four categories, and they're memorized and delivered orally. The poems are memorized word for word by specialist priests or what are called Brahmin. Unlike the bards of Europe who will modify and change their stories, the Veda text have to be memorized word for word. There's no ad-libbing and there's no changing of the text, and so they are handed down from generation to generation, word to word, word for word, which is why one of the reasons why the civilization stays so similar through. Now, like the Greeks, we have a religion in India that originally sacrifices animals to the god. It's also a polytheistic religion. The Brahmin or priests hold a great status in society, which will be bolstered by the establishment of what's known as a caste system. Now, this system states that every person is born to a certain social role. It could be merchant, nobleman, warrior, a ruler, a priest. And finally, you have what's known as the servile class, or just the servant class. Now, eventually, the caste system will come to the point that you were born into, and you must remain in a caste until you die. There is no moving between castes. How they get over this, though, get past it, is that with reincarnation, through proper action in this life, you may move to a better caste in the next life. So originally, the caste system was very similar to what we will find in Europe during the Middle Ages with the feudal system, which comprises of noblemen or warriors, those that are supposed to defend the country, the clergy, which is supposed to take care of the spiritual needs of the people, and then the farmers who actually take care of the actual material needs and food, things like that. It was also possible when the system first established, the caste system of India, to move between castes in one's lifetime. However, as that changed, another category was also added for non-Aryans, and this is the category of the untouchables or the unclean. And this is probably where most non-Indians have the biggest problem with the caste system, is this untouchable caste. But this allows for, the caste system allows for a power structure within the country that entails more than simple political institutions. And this is what things like the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita kind of reinforce. Now, Hinduism established itself as the main religion of India, and today is still a major religion of the country, though there is now Islam and other religions. Buddhism and Jainism, which will take a great deal from Hinduism, will come later, but will not have the same following as far as numbers of people in India as Hinduism will. The Ramayana and the Mahabharata, a story like the Iliad and the Odyssey, based on some historical events or person, but more importantly, contain and convey core Hindu values. These works, by disseminating these values and inculcating the Indian population into these values, much as the way that the Bible does for Western civilization, allow the Indo-Aryans to rule over India. Now, the main values, the most important concepts to Hinduism that we see in both the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and in the Bhagavad Gita are dharma. And this translates best to duty, to fulfilling the role one has been born to and acting according to the rules of society in one's caste. So, Rama goes off into the forest because it is his dharma. He's doing his duty. Vishnu's argument to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita is that it's his dharma to be a warrior. All of Rama's actions appear to be conducted in the Ramayana to fulfill the dharma. Even when his mother asks him not to fulfill those duties, she says, please don't go into the forest. He says, no, mother, it's my dharma. So it is dharma also, like I said, that Vishnu requires of Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. He must fulfill his role as a warrior. Now, the second most important value is that of karma, and this is the fact that each action one takes has consequences, either negative or positive. And with the idea of reincarnation, one cannot outrun these consequences, because if you do not pay for your actions in this life, you're going to pay for them in the next by how you're reborn. You'll be reborn into a lower caste or whatever. But you will pay for whatever actions you take. Now, finally, the last thing we need to discuss regarding the Hinduism is the three main gods. So as I said before, like the Greeks and the Romans, Hinduism is a polytheistic religion. Having numbers of gods. We have three main gods. So we have Brahma, the creator, and you need to make sure you don't confuse Brahma with Brahman. Brahman is the cosmic spirit which runs through everything. Brahma is the actual God. We then have Vishnu, the preserver, and the god through whom one finds release from the cycle of life. And finally, there's Shiva, the destroyer, transformer. And now, do not think that Shiva is considered a negative god just because Shiva is the destroyer. You actually need to have things destroyed in order to be able to bring about new things. I mean, if you don't destroy your ego in the hero's journey, how are you going to mature into a new human being? So it's not a negative concept. All right, so that pretty well covers the introduction to India to prepare you for the Ramayana and the Bhagavad Gita. You'll read about more of this in your book, and we'll have some discussion on it later.